find it remarkable how few people care about what Justin Trudeau is up to these days. I mean, I myself don't care either, but even the media party who used to love him, other than going on a date with the fading American pop star Katy Perry, no one cares. Maybe that's normal. Maybe that's healthy. I mean, I suppose when Trudeau took over from Stephen Harper in 2015, Harper pretty quickly vanished, but I think that's more because he didn't want to stick around or interfere. He was starting his new consulting business, but I still find it incredible that the country's political media industrial complex can go from hanging on Trudeau's every word to acting like he's a stranger. That said, we're still saddled with many Trudeau-era cronies. Half of Mark Carney's cabinet ministers are reheated leftovers from Trudeau's time. Here's the brilliant, coherent, strategic, thoughtful Melanie Joly.
We need to create new partnerships in the world. The world is being redistributed in economic blocks right now. And that is why, for countries that believe in free trade, there's a space. We can work with others, and we will work with Europe, and we will work with our other Asian countries. And that's also super important because it's our way to make sure that we continue to benefit from all the advantages that trade has given us over the last decades.
Well, a few things. I mean, we can't sell Europe what they want to buy from us because for a decade, the Trudeau Liberals and now the Carney Liberals have blocked Canadians from selling our most valuable products, oil and gas. It's not even close. Automobiles are a distant second to the sheer value of the oil and gas we produce for the world. Now, we sell more than 90% of it to the United States, of course, and they cleverly resell some of that to foreign countries, including in Europe, at a markup. Think about that. We sell to America, and then they ship abroad because we don't have any pipelines to blue water. At least not to Europe. There is now a pipeline to the West Coast called the Trans Mountain. But Trudeau blocked pipelines. He blocked Energy East that would have brought more than 1 million barrels of Canadian oil every day to New Brunswick, which is where the largest refinery in Canada is located. And currently that Canadian refinery is being filled up by OPEC oil from tankers from the Middle East. Can you believe it? Trudeau interfered to keep it that way. No liquefied LNG natural gas ports either. Japan and Germany and Korea all asked for us to sell them oil and gas, not to give it to them, to sell it to them, especially so they didn't have to buy it from corrupt regimes, either in OPEC or Russia. But Trudeau said there was no business case for it. Ah, yes, the great business mind of the ages, the great industrialist, the great financier and visionary. Trudeau, he just knew in his bones that no one would want our oil and gas, so he didn't bother to let private companies make it happen. In fact, he positively stopped them. So they went ahead and these countries signed a massive deal with OPEC dictatorships like Qatar. So yeah, thanks, Trudeau. The Qataris think there's a business case. As Mark Carney's new energy minister told the Germans last week, as I showed you, there is physically no chance that Canada could possibly get any oil or gas or even minerals to Europe, even in 5 years, even if everything were to start now. It's just 5 years just to build the infrastructure.
So I'm not an engineer. I think the goal and what I've seen the proponents talking about is being able to ship in as little as 5 years from. So that's what their goal is.
Yeah, not sure what Melanie Joly thinks we can sell to Europe that they want. They told us what they want, oil and gas, ethical oil and gas, so they can get off the conflict oil and gas from Russia mainly. There was this weird moment where she actually said the whole world wants Canada's expertise on how to deal with Donald Trump.
So if there's a country in the world that understands the US, it's Canada. And so that's why there's so many delegations, so many countries that are coming to see us, to ask us about the new administration, to ask us about how we and they can adapt. And so I think that Canada's influence is actually increasing because of the impacts that the world is now facing with the new administration.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was ever true. Not sure that's worth anything. Certainly not worth, $1 billion a day, which is what our oil and gas exports are worth. But in the end, it's not true. A few weeks ago, Mark Carney just admitted surrender to Donald Trump, dropping all of our tariffs against the United States for nothing in return.
So let's be absolutely clear. Canada currently has the best trade deal with the United States. And while it's different from what we had before, it is still better than that of any other country. So as we work to address outstanding trade issues with the United States, it's important, it's vital. We do everything we can to preserve this unique advantage for Canadian workers, Canadian businesses. And doing so will require both building on a soon-to-be revised CUSMA, our free trade agreement with the US and Mexico, as well as developing a new form of trade and security partnership with the United States. In this context, and consistent with Canada's commitment to CUSMA, I'm announcing today that the Canadian government will now match the United States by removing all of Canada's tariffs on US goods.
Here's what I don't get. Carney has dropped all the tariffs against the United States, just total surrender, just taking it. The opposite of what he campaigned on in the election, elbows up, you know. So why is Carney's right-hand man, Doug Ford, still doing weird stunts, getting more and more desperate for attention, like he's some reality star, like this one here?
You're going after the largest customer. You know something? I always say smart people aren't too smart, and you guys are about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this. So, you know something? I found a bottle, and I don't even drink, of Crown Oil, right? I see that Crown Oil. I saw it at home. So this is what I think about Crown Oil. That's what they could do. And I think everyone else should do the same thing. Start supporting companies that make whiskey here by Ontario people. That's what we need to do, is support each other. You know something? I'm going to make this even come out quicker because it's not coming out. I know Mayor Barry wants to lie on the floor right now with his mouth open.
No thanks.
But no, I wish I could get this out coming out quicker, but I'll stand here until it's over.
So if I understand it right, he is now deciding to punish a Canadian company. I don't know if you know this, but Crown Royal is, they make their whiskey in Gimli, Manitoba, which is part of Canada. But Doug Ford is really mad at them, and he's mad at Trump, even though his boss, Mark Carney, has surrendered to Trump, and nobody in the White House is talking to any of them. Oh yeah, except someone in Canada apparently wants to sign up to the American anti-missile system called Golden Dome, and Trump says he'll think about it.
In Huntsville, Space.com will play a key role in building the Golden Dome, as you know. That's going to be a big thing. Everybody wants to be a participant in it. Missile Defense Shield, we're going to be having a Golden Dome that the likes of which nobody's ever seen before, the finest, the best. And by the way, Canada called. They want to be a part of it, and that'll be great. But Canada wants very much to be included in that, and we're going to work something out with them, I hope.
Yeah, if you can tell me what Mark Carney has achieved in the last 175 days as Prime Minister, then you're ahead of me. What has he achieved with Donald Trump other than total surrender? What has he achieved with finding other markets? But let me tell you something funny today. A few stories that sort of combined got my mind. Stories that show the uselessness of our political media class in Canada and how hollow their beliefs are. If you were to ask me how Carney won the election, I think it's sort of simple. I would say it was two parts. First of all, he announced he was going to dial the carbon tax down to zero. Now, he didn't repeal it. He just turned the rate down to zero. He'll put it back up another time. So he scrapped the carbon tax, at least it appears that way. The guy who led GFANZ, that's the Global Financial Alliance for Net Zero, that was basically convincing all the banks in the world to reduce carbon. He was the leading carbon tax lobbyist in the world, you could say. Suddenly he said it wasn't important or urgent anymore, his life's work. Well, he did that so he could take away Pierre Poilievre's top issue. So he said no more carbon tax, and he took away a huge reason to vote against him. And then, of course, he posed as the Trump fighter, when we now see he was, in fact, the Trump surrenderer. So those are the two parts. But back to that carbon tax. You know, for a whole generation now, it's like 25 years, The challenging gotcha question for every conservative running for office has always been, what's your climate plan? What's your net zero emissions plan? What's your plan to meet the Paris climate protocol? What will you do to stop the planet from global warming, from global boiling? How many federal election debates have had an entire section devoted to that issue? How many op-eds have been written by the wise people? It's got to be in the thousands. And then as soon as the Liberal candidate says, guys, that's an inconvenient issue for me. I'm doing a 180-degree turn, and I don't really want to talk about it at all. And they just all said, okay. Every single one of them. The Toronto Star, the CBC, people who talked about climate emergencies and climate crises and how the climate was killing old people and killing young people. The Greta people, suddenly they just actually didn't care anymore. Even Greta didn't care. She was too busy working for Hamas. Because it was all fake the whole time. It was just a way to bash conservatives, to bash the West, to bash America. And in this case, the Liberal champion, the only guy who could defeat Pierre Poilievre, said, guys, I'm on the wrong side of that issue. Can you help me out? And they said, sure. They just did. The ideology they claim to believe in so deeply forever, they just, in the wink of an eye, just abandon it. All of them, for power. Isn't that funny? I'll come back to that in a minute because look what else Mark Carney has said and done in his 175 days as Prime Minister. We showed you what he said yesterday about temporary foreign workers. Pierre Poilievre said he wants to phase out the temporary foreign worker program. And Carney met that and rebutted it by saying that he met with big business CEOs and they all agreed it was better for them to pay workers less. And they actually wanted more of these low-cost foreign indentured laborers. So that's who he listens to, and that's that.
That program has a role. It has to be focused in terms of its role. And it's part of what we're reviewing. It's part of what we will be discussing, how well the temporary foreign worker program is working and how our overall immigration system is working. We've been absolutely clear as a government that we want, and we're putting in place policies so that the overall level of immigration as a proportion of the population will decline from around 7% today to around 5% several years from now. Now, the biggest contributor to immigration is not temporary foreign workers. It's a variety of other factors. And I will say, je vais répéter en français parce que c'est important, when I talk to businesses around the country, particularly in Quebec, but elsewhere across the country, their number one issue is tariffs, and their number two issue is access to temporary foreign workers. Okay?
And he was literally looking the CBC in the eye and saying, look, I spoke with the CEOs, I spoke with my fellow oligarchs and billionaires, and we all agree lower wages are better for us. Not a word from the labor unions, not a word from the NDP. And the CBC didn't just report Mark Carney's statement, they went into action fighting for him. They had panel after panel defending foreign workers. They brought on experts who said that high wages for Canadian citizens, it's a form of xenophobia to say no to low-wage foreigners. The CBC just immediately became shills for industrial employers versus the workers. And then, chef's kiss. Let me show you this headline in the CBC. It has since been changed, but here's the one I saw earlier this morning. The headline is, Project 2025 Mastermind invited to speak at Carney's cabinet meeting. And this is at the CBC, which was apoplectic. I don't know if you've heard of the phrase Project 2025. It didn't get a lot of chatter up here in Canada. It was an idea put together by different U.S. conservative think tanks on sort of a manifesto of what they would do or what they would want Donald Trump to do if he won the 2024 election. They put this together actually years before. This was sort of their idea if Trump wins, we don't want to waste a minute's time. Here's all of our ideas. It was a 900-page manifesto. By the way, Trump himself later said, well, that's not really mine. And he has picked up some ideas from it. But to me, the deliciousness of the head of the MAGA movement, which CBC can't say without spitting, being invited into the heart of the Liberal cabinet retreat. The CBC could not believe this. They talked to their Liberal friends. And let me just quote, it's being criticized as an authoritarian playbook and a far-right assault on America by Policy Institute, the Center for American Progress. So they asked this liberal think tank to denounce this guest. Anyways, I love that part. My point is he invited like the equivalent of Rush Limbaugh, I guess you could say, to speak to the liberal meeting. But Mark Carney's their man. Mark Carney is their guy. I mean, I say again, these were the folks who just went nuts when that Christian singer, Sean Foyt, because he was Trump adjacent, he was just doing some prayer meetings across Canada and everyone went mental. But he's just a pastor who loves doing outdoor prayer services. He's not a political leader. But the Liberal Party invited the master of the dark arts, the conjurer of right-wing things, the evil heart of MAGA, right there into the Liberal retreat. Now, I think that they were later appalled and they rescinded the invitation, but you saw where their heart was. Hey, if you had a time machine and went back 12 months in time to September of 2024, when Trudeau was still the leader, but he was down by 20 points, when things were falling apart for him, when there was a mutiny, and if you were to say back then that in 1 year's time, by September 2025, there will be a prime minister who ends the carbon tax, who listens to CEOs, who consults with right-wing Republicans. Oh, and he's a liberal, not a conservative. What would a person a year ago have said to you? They would have said, you're nuts. They would have said, oh no, that's exactly what Pierre Poilievre's going to do. It's so weird, isn't it? But then again, it just goes to show, never believe anything the liars say. When the CBC or when the lobby groups call you right-wing, when they say you're too Trumpy, when they say you hate the planet or whatever, they don't actually believe those things themselves. They don't actually believe in anything or any position. Everything I just listed, ending the carbon tax, listening to CEO billionaires, undermining workers, hobnobbing with Trumpy guys, are things that they have said they always hated, and yet they abide it because it's their guy now. It's Mark Carney, so they are just fine with it. Anything to stop the evil conservatives. What a laugh, eh? But even so, a thing to cry over too. I mean, 175 days as prime minister, and what has he done for the country? I'll tell you, I'm a little surprised. I mean, the chairman of a $1 trillion company called Brookfield Asset Management hasn't been able to do anything, to manage anything, to accomplish anything in 175 days. That's half a year. Nothing. Tell me one thing, I challenge you. What has he achieved in half a year? My God, what did he actually do at Brookfield? Oh, other than drive down wages for workers, that is.